She was a virgin and carried a past of silences no one dared to touch. He was a ruthless billionaire used to buying everything, but the question he asked would change everything. Is it this raise you want, or is it me you desire? If you enjoy love and romance stories, watch until the end, subscribe to this channel, and leave a comment telling us where you are listening from. The rain beat against the windows of the Hollister Holdings Tower with an insistence that echoed the nervousness of Emily Morrison as she waited in the black marble lobby. Her hands trembled imperceptibly, hidden inside the synthetic leather folder she had bought at a downtown Chicago store. 26 years old, business administration graduate from a public university, no connections or recommendations. On paper, she was just another desperate candidate seeking an opportunity at one of the largest holding companies in the country. In reality, she carried a secret that could destroy everything. Isabella. Her younger sister had disappeared 3 years ago, swallowed by the same company where Emily now found herself. The police had filed the case as capable adult who chose to disappear, but Emily knew there was something rotten behind that disappearance. Isabella would never abandon her family without explanation. She would never leave behind her 5-year-old daughter, whom she raised alone. And especially, she would never vanish shortly after securing a strategic position in Victor Hollister's company, the billionaire who moved mountains of money as if they were grains of sand. The elevator arrived with a soft sound, and Emily adjusted. The black skirt she had specifically chosen to appear discreet. Not too tight, not too loose, not too expensive, not too cheap. A calculated invisibility she had learned by observing women who survived in hostile environments. When the doors opened on the 42nd floor, she was greeted by a blonde receptionist who examined her from head to toe with the kind of gaze that classifies people in seconds. Emily Morrison. The voice was too sweet, like artificial syrup. Yes. Mr. Hollister is waiting for you in the conference room. Please follow me. The corridor was a museum of contemporary art, with paintings that cost more than Emily would earn in an entire lifetime. Abstract canvases in shades of grey and black, metallic sculptures that seemed to have been torn from elegant nightmares. Everything there screamed power, but a cold, calculated power. When they reached the glass room, Emily felt as if she were entering a giant aquarium suspended over the city. Chicago stretched below like an infinite urban tapestry, and for a moment she forgot why she was there. Please, come in. The voice came from behind her, deep and controlled. Emily turned and saw Victor Hollister for the first time. He was 38, dark hair slicked back with gel, greyish eyes that seemed to dissect everything they observed. He wore a suit that cost more than Emily's used car, but it was the way he moved that caught attention. Each gesture was measured, as if he knew exactly the impact it would cause on whoever watched him. Sit down. He pointed to the leather chair in front of the glass desk. Coffee? Water? No, thank you. Emily kept her voice firm, although she felt he could hear her heartbeats. Victor sat on the other side of the desk and opened a folder with papers she recognized as her resume. For long minutes, he read in silence, occasionally raising his eyes to study her. Emily forced herself to maintain eye contact even though each second seemed like an eternity. She had rehearsed that moment hundreds of times, but nothing had prepared her for the intensity of that gaze. Interesting background. He closed the folder. Public university, internships at small companies, no experience in holdings. Tell me, Emily, why should I hire you when I have piles of resumes from candidates who graduated from the best private universities in the country? The question was a provocation, and she knew it. Because those who come from the best universities never had to fight for anything. I know the value of an opportunity because I know the price of the lack of one. An almost imperceptible smile passed across Victor's lips. And what do you know about Hollister Holdings? I know it's one of the largest holdings in North America, with investments in technology, agribusiness, and energy. I know you took over the presidency at 28 after your father's death, and that since then, you've multiplied revenue tenfold. Emily made a calculated pause. And I know the company has a reputation for being ruthless with those who don't deliver results. Ruthless. He repeated the word as if savoring it. That's an interesting way to describe excellence. Tell me about your family, Emily. The question caught her by surprise, but she maintained her composure. My mother works as a seamstress. My father died when I was 15. I have a younger sister. The lie came naturally. She couldn't reveal that Isabella had disappeared. Not yet. Heavy financial responsibilities for someone so young. Responsibilities taught me never to give up. Victor leaned back in his chair, studying her with that disturbing intensity. You have something different, Emily, a hardness in your eyes that doesn't match your age, as if you've seen things you'd rather forget. The comment made her cold inside, but she forced a professional smile. Difficult experiences make us stronger, don't you think? Or more dangerous? He stood up, walking to the window. The position is in the administrative department. Starting salary of $8,000, health insurance, meal vouchers, business hours with possibility of overtime as needed. He turned to her. But I have one final question. Are you here just for the job, or is there something more? Emily felt her blood freeze. It was impossible that he knew about Isabella, but something in the way he observed her suggested that Victor Hollister was not a man who left anything to chance. I'm here for the opportunity for professional growth, Mr. Hollister. Call me Victor. He returned to the desk and picked up a golden pen. Welcome to Hollister Holdings, Emily. I hope you find everything you're looking for here. As he signed the employment contract, Emily observed his hands. They were elegant, but there were small scars on his knuckles, as if they had been broken and healed poorly. Details that told stories she didn't yet know, but that already dangerously sparked her curiosity. When she left the building an hour later, with the signed contract and instructions to start the following Monday, Emily knew she had taken the first step on a path of no return. She didn't yet imagine that Victor had spent the last 20 minutes after the interview looking out the window, thinking about how she had lied about her sister, and wondering how far she would be willing to go to discover the truth he had buried. 3 years ago, Emily arrived at Hollister Holdings on Monday at 7:45, 15 minutes before the official time. She had spent the weekend researching everything she could find about the company, about Victor, and especially about the employees who had worked in the strategic sector in recent years. The list was curiously small for a company the size of the holding, and several names appeared only for short periods before simply disappearing from public records. The administrative department was on the 30th floor, well below the penthouse where Victor maintained his office. Emily was introduced to her supervisor, Carla Mendez, a woman in her 40s with hair tied in a perfect bun and a smile that never reached her eyes. The first tasks were simple: organizing documents, entering data into spreadsheets, answering routine emails. Work that any intern could do, but Emily executed everything with meticulous precision, knowing that every move was being observed. "You're very quiet for someone of your profile," Carla commented on the second day, appearing beside Emily's desk, with a stack of contracts. "Usually people from more humble origins make a point of showing they deserve to be here." "I prefer to let my work speak for me," Emily replied, without raising her eyes from the computer screen. "Interesting." Carla deposited the papers on the desk. "These contracts need to be digitized and filed by the end of the day. They're confidential, so I expect total discretion." Emily picked up the first contract and felt her heart race. It was a consulting agreement from 3 years ago, signed by Isabella Morrison. Her sister had used her maiden name, but the signature was unmistakable. Emily forced herself to maintain a neutral expression as she quickly read the document. Specialized strategic. Consultant salary well above market average, extremely strict confidentiality clauses. And something more, a mention of special projects under direct supervision of the presidency. "Any problem?" Carla's voice made her look up. "No, none. Just reading the terms to understand the formatting pattern." "Good. Victor likes detail-oriented employees." Carla made a significant pause. "By the way, he asked to be informed of your progress. Seems you made a good first impression." The rest of the day passed in a fog of controlled tension. Emily scanned each contract with extra care, looking for any clue about what had happened to Isabella. She found 3 more documents related to her sister's work, all with dates that ended abruptly 6 months before the disappearance. As if she had been transferred to something that left no paper trail. On Thursday, Emily was organizing files in the basement when she heard voices coming from a corridor that supposedly led only to the parking garage. One of the voices was Victor's. The other she didn't recognize. Curious and cautious, she approached silently. "Can't just disappear like the previous one," said the unknown voice. "The family is asking questions." "Families always ask questions," Victor replied coldly. "That's why we have procedures. Your procedures are leaving traces. The internal audit. The internal audit is controlled by me. Relax, Marcus. Everything is being resolved as always." Emily backed away quickly, her heart beating so hard she was sure they could hear it. She returned to the archive pretending to organize folders, but the words echoed in her mind. Like the previous one. Was it a reference to Isabella? On Friday, things changed completely. Emily was in the elevator returning from lunch when Victor entered on the 33rd floor. They were alone for 12 floors, and the silence was almost physical. She felt his eyes on her, but kept her gaze fixed on the digital numbers that changed slowly. "How are you adapting, Emily?" His voice was softer than during the interview. "Very well, sir." "Victor, the team has been welcoming." "And the work? Don't you find it too simple for someone with your qualifications?" The question carried a subtle provocation. Emily turned to face him. "I prefer to start slowly and build trust rather than take on responsibilities for which I'm not prepared." Victor smiled, and for the first time the smile seemed genuine. Prudent, but too much prudence can be wasted potential. The elevator stopped on the 40th floor. "Carla told me you have excellent attention to detail. There's a special project. I could use someone like that for..." "What kind of project?" "The kind that requires absolute discretion." He held the elevator door open. "Think about it over the weekend. On Monday we'll talk more." Emily spent Saturday and Sunday in a constant state of alert. She researched everything she could about special projects at Hollister Holdings, but found only vague references in annual reports. Specialized strategic consulting, customized solutions for specific demands, phrases that said nothing and yet suggested everything. On Monday, Carla informed her that she had been temporarily reassigned to a special project under direct supervision of the presidency. Her new workstation was on the 41st floor, an open space with only 6 desks, all occupied by people who seemed to carry secrets like work accessories. "Emily Morrison, new team member," announced Marcus Taylor, the man whose voice she had recognized in the basement. He was tall, thin, with the kind of paleness that comes from spending too much time in closed rooms. "You'll work directly with me for the first few weeks." The project, she quickly discovered, was a mixture of background investigation, competitor monitoring, and something that Marcus euphemistically called image crisis management. Emily received dossiers on politicians, rival businessmen, journalists, who had written critical articles about the company. Detailed personal information, financial histories, relationships, vices, family secrets. "Our job is to anticipate problems," Marcus explained as he handed over a particularly thick folder. "Victor doesn't like unpleasant surprises. We prefer to resolve things before they become public." "Resolve how?" Marcus looked at her with an expression that mixed amusement and warning. "With creativity, Emily. Always with lots of creativity." That afternoon, alone at her desk with a pile of dossiers, Emily found a folder marked only with ISA 2021. Inside, surveillance photographs, reports from private investigators, and intimate details about the life of a woman she immediately recognized, even from a profile and at a distance. Isabella. Her sister had been investigated, followed, catalogued as if she were a laboratory insect. The last page of the dossier was an internal memo dated 3 days before Isabella's disappearance. Subject shows signs of emotional instability. Immediate removal from the project is recommended. before it compromises operations. Authorization awaiting VH signature. Emily closed the folder with trembling hands. Victor had signed her sister's sentence. And now she was exactly where Isabella had been 3 years before, with the difference that this time she knew she was being hunted. When she looked up, Victor was standing at the entrance to the room, watching her with that disturbing intensity that had already become familiar. He walked to her desk slowly, like a predator that isn't in a hurry because it knows the prey has nowhere to run. Found something interesting? His voice was too casual. Emily looked at him directly, feeling she had reached a point of no return. I found exactly what I was looking for. For a moment that seemed eternal, they looked at each other in silence. Then Victor smiled, but there was no warmth in that smile, only recognition. Great, he said, picking up the folder from the desk. Then now we can have a real conversation. Victor's office on the top floor was a temple of power and solitude. Glass walls offered a 360-degree view of Chicago, as if the entire city were private property. Emily sat in the leather chair he indicated, keeping her back straight and her hands crossed in her lap. The folder with Isabella's dossier was open on the mahogany desk between them, like a silent confession. 3 years, said Victor, pouring himself an amber whiskey from a bottle that cost more than Emily's annual salary. For 3 years you planned this, changed your name in the initial university documents, created an impeccable professional history, even subtly altered your appearance. Impressive dedication. Emily didn't try to deny it. Did you kill my sister? The question came direct, without beating around the bush. Victor stopped with the glass halfway to his mouth, his grey eyes studying her with an intensity that made the air seem thicker. No. He drank slowly. But I was responsible for her death, which is perhaps worse. The world seemed to slow down. Around Emily, she had prepared for denials, lies, threats, not for such a direct confession that cut like a blade. Isabella was special. Victor got up, walking to the window. Intelligent, determined, unable to accept injustices, exactly like you, I imagine. She discovered things about this company that she shouldn't have discovered about me. What things? That I own much more than appears on paper. That Hollister Holdings is just the legal face of operations that extend into grey territory. Money laundering, insider information, political pressure. The kind of business that keeps powerful families in power for generations. He turned to her. Your sister threatened to expose all of this. Emily felt nausea rising in her throat. So you eliminated her. I protected her. Victor's voice carried a cold anger. Or tried to. When I found out she had copied confidential files, I offered a way out. Enough money to disappear, to start a new life far from here. She refused. Because she wasn't a coward. Because she didn't understand who she was dealing with. Victor returned to the desk, resting his hands on the top. I'm not the only owner of this company, Emily. There are others, people for whom Isabella represented an unacceptable risk. When they discovered what she knew, they gave an ultimatum. Surrender the files or die. And you chose for her? I chose for myself. The confession came out like a punch. I gave up her location in exchange for guarantees that she would only be removed from the path. But they lied. They always lie. Emily rose abruptly, the chair rolling backward. You're a monster. Yes. The answer came without hesitation, and you knew that when you decided to come after me. The question is, what do you intend to do now? I'm going to destroy you, and this company, and all the bastards involved in this. Victor smiled, but there was something broken in that smile. With what evidence? The files Isabella copied were destroyed. The people who killed her are dead or disappeared. I made sure of that personally. He paused. Your sister wasn't the only one who underestimated my capacity for vengeance. Vengeance? I loved Isabella, Emily. The words came out like a confession, ripped by force. Not as a lover, not as a conquest, as redemption. She made me believe I could be different from what my father taught me to be. And when I lost her, I lost along with her the only part of me that still had any humanity. Emily stared at him, looking for signs of lies in his face. What she found was pain, pure, raw, genuine, and that scared her more than any threat. Then, why did you hire me? You knew who I was from the beginning. Because you are identical to her in manners, in determination, in the way you raise your chin when you're challenging something bigger than you. Victor approached slowly, and because part of me hoped you would be able to do what Isabella couldn't. Which is, destroy me completely. Emily retreated to the glass wall, feeling the cold of the surface through her blouse. You're insane. Probably. He stopped a meter away. But I'm also tired, Emily. Tired of being what they made me be, tired of sleeping with the weight of each life I destroyed. Your sister was the last. After her, I swore there would be no more. Lies. Marcus Taylor. Victor mentioned the name as if it were an epitaph. Did you think you were being discreet when you started investigating him? He's been my right-hand man for 15 years. He has information about all our special projects, including details about Isabella's death that even I don't completely. No, Emily felt her blood freeze. He knows that He's known since day one, and he's just waiting for my order to solve the problem the same way he solved it with your sister. Victor extended his hand, as if to touch her, but stopped in the air. The difference is that this time, I'm not going to give the order. Why? Because maybe you're my only chance at redemption, or at self-destruction. I haven't decided which I prefer yet. The office fell silent, except for the distant sound of traffic 40 floors below. Emily observed the man in front of her, trying to reconcile the cold executive she had researched for months with the destroyed human, being standing before her. There was truth there, but also danger. A lot of danger. What do you want from me? She finally asked. For you to stay. The answer came immediately. To continue pretending to be an ordinary employee while we collect. Enough evidence to destroy this company from the inside out. To help me do justice for Isabella and for all the other people who were destroyed by this place. And afterward? Afterward, you decide if I deserve to live with what I did, or if it would be better for everyone if I disappeared too. Emily studied him in silence. It was an insane proposal, offered by a man who had clearly lost any sense of self-preservation, but it was also a chance to discover the whole truth about Isabella's death and to bring justice to those responsible. How do you? Do I know it's not a trap? Victor went back to the desk and opened a drawer. He took out a revolver with a mother-of-pearl handle that he placed on the mahogany top. Because I'm literally putting my life in your hands. He pushed the gun in her direction. It's loaded. 5 bullets. If at any point you think I'm lying, using you, or posing a threat, you can kill me right here. No camera works in this office. No one would know what happened until it was too late. Emily looked at the gun, then at him. What, if I shoot right now? Then at least I'll die knowing I did one right thing in my life. Slowly, Emily extended her hand and took the revolver. It was heavier than she expected, cold and solid. She pointed it at Victor, who didn't move or blink. My sister had a 5-year-old daughter when she disappeared. Sophie. The name came out of his mouth like a prayer. She's with your grandmother in Evanston. I've been paying all expenses since Isabella died. Private education, health insurance, everything. It's the least I can do. The information caught her off guard. Emily lowered the gun slightly. You know my niece? I've never seen her in person, but I know she likes to draw, that she has a talent for mathematics, and that she asks about her mother every night before bed. His voice became softer. Isabella talked a lot about her. She said everything she did was to give her daughter a better future. Emily felt tears threatening, but she held them back. If I agree to this madness, I want some guarantees. All I can give. First, complete access to the company files, everything. Done. Second, protection for my family. If something happens to me, they'll be safe. Word of honor. A murderer's word isn't worth much. Victor nodded, accepting the accusation. Then don't believe in my word. Believe in my self-interest. You're my only chance to leave this life with some dignity. It wouldn't make sense to harm you." Emily kept the gun pointed at him for a few more seconds, then placed it on the desk. "One attempt at betrayal and I won't hesitate." "Understood." "And when all this is over, when we've destroyed this company and put all the guilty parties in jail, you disappear from my life forever." "With pleasure." Emily extended her hand. "Then we have a deal." Victor shook her hand, and for the first time since she had entered the office, he smiled genuinely. "Welcome to the dark side of Hollister Holdings, Emily Morrison. I hope you know what you're getting into." She squeezed his hand firmly. "I hope you know too, Victor Hollister, because if I find out you're deceiving me, the bullet I should have fired today will be just the beginning of what you'll suffer." In the days following the agreement, Emily felt like a tightrope walker walking over an abyss. During the day, she maintained the facade of an exemplary employee, greeted Marcus Taylor with professional cordiality, and executed the tasks delegated to her with meticulous precision. At night, she met with Victor in discreet locations around the city to plan the systematic destruction of the company that paid them. The first meeting outside the office took place at a small cafe in Lincoln Park, away from corporate eyes. Victor arrived 15 minutes late, wearing dark jeans and a sweater that made him look younger and less intimidating. Emily almost didn't recognize him without the impeccable suit and imperial posture. "Did you order anything?" he asked, sitting at the table at the back of the establishment. "Just water." Emily kept her hands crossed on the table. "I haven't had much appetite lately." "Understandable," Victor nodded to the waiter. "Double espresso, please." When they were alone again, he opened a discreet folder. "I brought the first documents. Consulting contracts from the last 5 years. You'll find interesting patterns." Emily quickly leafed through the papers. Names she didn't recognize, exorbitant amounts for vaguely described services, confidentiality clauses that seemed more like soul contracts with the devil. All these consultants disappeared, died in accidents, or changed their identities. Victor drank the coffee as if it were bitter medicine. "Hollister Holdings doesn't keep ex-employees, Emily. It keeps secrets." "How many people?" "In the last 10 years? 17 that I'm sure of. Probably more that didn't come to my direct knowledge." The number made her feel nauseous. "And you participated in all of them?" "Directly?" "Only 3, including Isabella." He didn't look away. "For the others, I was an accomplice by omission, by cowardice." Emily studied his face, looking for signs of the monster she had imagined during 3 years of planning. What she found was an exhausted man, carrying the weight of crimes he had committed and others he had not prevented. It was more disturbing than pure evil. "Why now?" she asked. "Why did you decide to stop?" "Because I saw what it did to me." Victor pointed to his own reflection in the window. "Look at me, Emily, really look. What kind of man do you see?" She observed him for long seconds. She saw the premature lines around his eyes, the permanent tension in the muscles of his neck, the way he compulsively checked his phone as if expecting bad news at any moment. A man who's afraid. Exactly. Afraid to sleep, because the nightmares are worse than insomnia. Afraid to get emotionally involved with anyone because everyone who gets close ends up dead. Afraid to leave this life, because I don't know if there's redemption for what I've done. He leaned over the table. "Your sister was the first person in years who looked at me and saw potential for something better. When she died, the last hope that I could be human again died with her. And now you're here, and by some miracle I don't deserve, you're willing to give me a chance to do the right thing." Emily picked up one of the contracts and analyzed the clauses. These special consultants, what exactly did they do? Blackmail mainly. They collected compromising information about politicians, judges, competing businessmen. Hollister Holdings grew so much not just through business competence, but by knowing exactly which secrets to use to pressure key people. And Marcus coordinated these operations. Marcus is more than a coordinator. He's the living archive of the company. He knows every dirty secret, every buried body, every political favor that owes us protection. Victor lowered his voice. He's also been completely loyal to me for 15 years, until he discovers I'm planning to betray him. What happens when he discovers? He'll try to kill me and then try to kill you. The statement was made with frightening naturalness, as if they were discussing the weather. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Then why don't we eliminate him first? Victor looked at her with a strange expression. Because then you would become exactly what I'm trying to stop being. 2 weeks later, the dynamics at the office had subtly changed. Marcus began to observe Emily more carefully, asking seemingly casual questions about her personal life, her career plans, her family. She responded with the right measure of professional ambition and calculated naivety, but she felt his eyes on her constantly. "You're adapting well to confidential work," he commented one afternoon, appearing beside her desk with a steaming coffee. "Victor mentions you have potential for greater responsibilities. I'm honored by the trust." Trust is something built slowly in this business. Marcus sat on the edge of the desk, invading her personal space, and it can be destroyed instantly. "I understand perfectly." "I hope so. We've had problems in the past with employees who exceed their access limits. It never ends well for anyone." Emily maintained a neutral expression, but inside she felt the alarm going off. He knew, or at least strongly suspected. That night, she met Victor at a hotel bar on Michigan Avenue. He was drinking whiskey and watching the avenue's movement through the panoramic window. When she sat down, he didn't immediately look in her direction. "Marcus is suspicious," she said without preamble. "I know. He made a point of making it clear to me this afternoon. Then it's time to accelerate the process." Victor finally turned to her. "I have a proposal you won't like." "Say it." "I need you to get closer to me publicly. Dinners, social events, the press speculating about a possible romance." He paused. "Marcus would never suspect a woman who is clearly interested only in my money and status." Emily felt her face heat up. "You want me to pretend to be your lover?" "I want you to be my facade girlfriend. Important difference. And if I refuse, then we'll have to think of another way to explain why we spend so much time together, and frankly, I can't think of any." Emily drank the wine she had ordered, using the time to process the proposal. It was risky on several levels. Getting publicly close to Victor meant exposing herself, creating vulnerabilities, further blurring. The line between the mission and the feelings she didn't want to admit were developing. What kind of public relationship? Enough to be convincing. Appearances at events, some strategic photographs for the tabloids, maybe 1 or 2 weekends. In places where we'll be seen. Victor studied her expression. Nothing you can't convincingly pretend. And in private? In private, we continue as we are. Partners with a common goal. Emily nodded slowly. When do we start? Tomorrow night. Charity gala at the Drake Hotel. An event Marcus would never miss. It will be our public debut. I'll need a dress. Victor smiled for the first time in days. I've already taken care of that. And shoes, jewelry, everything you need to look like you belong in my world. He slid a golden card across the table. Personal shopper at 2 in the afternoon, don't economize. Emily took the card, feeling the weight of what she was committing to do. What if I can't be convincing? You can. The certainty in his voice surprised her. You're one of the most determined people I've ever met. If you decide to do something, you do it right. How can you be so sure? Because you're here. Because you spent 3 years planning an impossible revenge and almost succeeded. Because when I offered you a gun to kill me, you had enough strength not to pull the trigger. He leaned across the table. Believe me, Emily, you're capable of anything. The next morning, Emily woke up with the feeling that her life had definitely changed overnight. She was no longer just a woman seeking justice for her dead sister. She had become a central piece in a much more complex and dangerous game. But as she prepared for the day, looking at herself in the small bathroom mirror of her rented apartment, she had a strange certainty. For the first time in 3 years, she felt truly alive. And that scared her more than any threat from Marcus or confession from Victor. The dress was a work of art in black silk that cost more than Emily earned in 6 months. The personal shopper, an elegant woman named Fernanda, had chosen each detail with surgical precision. The cut that enhanced her silhouette without being vulgar, the discreet but expensive enough jewelry to communicate status, the shoes that made her look taller and more confident. When Emily looked at herself in the fitting room mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. "Perfect," murmured Fernanda, adjusting a diamond bracelet on Emily's wrist. "Mr. Hollister has good taste in women." "We're not—" Emily began to defend herself but stopped. This was exactly the impression they should give. "Of course not," Fernanda smiled with complicity. "They never are, until they are." At 7 in the evening, Victor arrived at Emily's apartment in an armored BMW driven by a silent driver. When she opened the door, he stopped in the middle of the sentence he was speaking on the phone and simply looked at her for long seconds. There was something in his eyes that she couldn't completely decipher, but that made her blush. "You look—" he began, then shook his head. "Beautiful." "It's the dress." "It's not the dress." The comment created an awkward silence that lasted until they reached the hotel. During the journey, Victor explained the main guests she should meet, the topics she should avoid, and how she should behave to seem naturally enchanted with him. "Touch my arm when I say something funny," he instructed. "Smile more with your eyes than with your mouth. And if someone asks about our relationship, be vague but happy. Seems like you've done this before." "I have, several times. Never for genuine reasons." The Drake Hotel was decorated like a royal palace with exotic flowers and crystals that captured the light from the chandeliers in a hypnotic way. Emily recognized several faces from television and magazines, businessmen, politicians, celebrities. People who moved the country with a simple nod of the head. "Breathe," Victor murmured close to her ear when they stopped at the entrance to the main hall. "You belong here tonight." "I don't belong and never will." "Then pretend you do. That's what acting is for." They entered the hall arm in arm, and Emily felt the weight of dozens of curious gazes. Conversations momentarily stopped, heads turned discreetly, cell phones appeared as if by chance. In a matter of minutes, she knew that speculation about her identity would be running through all the social circles of the city. Marcus appeared almost immediately, impeccable in a tuxedo and carrying 2 glasses of champagne. His smile was perfect and completely false. "Victor, what a pleasant surprise to see you accompanied." He extended a glass to Emily. "And by someone so charming." "Marcus Taylor, my right-hand man." Victor made the introductions. "Emily Morrison, our talented new employee." Marcus kissed Emily's hand. "Victor tells me you've been standing out at work." "He's too kind." "I'm sure he's not." Marcus's eyes studied her like a scientist examining an interesting sample. "And tell me, when did this personal development begin?" Victor put his arm around Emily's waist, pulling her slightly close. "Some things happen naturally, Marcus. You know how it is." "Of course, natural." Marcus drank the champagne slowly. "Well, Emily, I hope you're prepared for the kind of attention that comes with proximity to Victor. It can be intense." There was a subtle threat in the words, disguised as friendly warning. Emily forced a brilliant smile. "I'm learning to deal with intensity, thank you." For the rest of the night, they circulated through the event like a genuine couple. Victor introduced her to dozens of important people, told anecdotes that made her laugh sincerely, danced with her 3 times on the floor set up in the center of the hall. Emily discovered that he was a surprisingly good dancer, guiding her with confidence and elegance that made it seem like she knew what she was doing. "You're doing well," he murmured during a slow waltz, his hand firm on Emily's bare back. "I'm pretending well." "You're not pretending when you laugh, nor when you look at me as if I were interesting instead of just useful." The comment made her miss a step, but he guided her smoothly back to the rhythm. "Don't confuse acting with feeling." "And if I confuse them?" Emily looked him in the eyes and saw something she hadn't noticed before: vulnerability. Victor Hollister, the man who commanded an empire of secrets and blackmail, was exposed in a way she hadn't anticipated. "Then we'll have a problem," she answered honestly. We already have several problems. One more wouldn't make a difference. The music ended, but they remained standing in the middle of the dance floor for a few seconds longer than necessary. When they finally separated, Emily noticed that Marcus was watching them from the edge of the hall, his face a mask of cold analysis. "He's suspicious," she murmured. "No, he's worried. It's different." Later, at the hotel bar, they found a relatively private corner to continue the charade. Victor ordered whiskey, Emily chose red wine. The conversation flowed naturally between them, a mixture of details about the investigation and personal observations that arose spontaneously. "Can I ask you a personal question?" Emily said after the second glass. "You can try. Why did you never get married? With your position, you could have chosen any woman." Victor swirled the whiskey in the glass, thoughtful. "Because marriage requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is dangerous in my world. Anyone too close becomes either a hostage or a weapon against me. But you've had relationships, arrangements, mutually beneficial agreements, never anything real. And Isabella?" The question came out before she could stop herself. Victor was silent for long moments. "Isabella was the first person who made me want to be vulnerable. And see how it ended. It wasn't your vulnerability that killed her, it was your cowardice." The words cut deep, and Emily saw the pain pass through his eyes like a quick shadow, but instead of being offended, he nodded. "You're right. And that's the difference between you two." "What difference?" "Isabella made me want to be better. You make me believe I can be better." The moment was interrupted by the approach of a tall man in a tuxedo, whom Emily recognized as one of the company's main shareholders. "Victor, what a pleasant surprise to find you here." The man shook his hand warmly, then turned his eyes to Emily. "And accompanied, I see." "Robert Falcon, Emily Morrison." Victor made the introductions with rehearsed naturalness. "Pleasure, my dear, and I must say, Victor, you've always had exceptional taste." "Emily is special," Victor replied, and there was something in the way he said it that made her stomach contract. "I imagine so to have captured the attention of our friend here. He is notoriously selective." Robert smiled at Emily. "I hope you know what you're doing, dear." "Why wouldn't I?" "Because Victor has a habit of complicating simple things. It's his nature." After Robert walked away, Emily and Victor remained silent for a few minutes. The ambient music from the bar created an artificial intimacy that made it difficult to remember that it was all an act. "It's time for us to go," Victor finally said. "We've given the show we needed to give tonight." In Chattanooga, the elevator on the way to the parking garage, Emily felt the weight of the night collapse on her. The adrenaline of the performance was dissipating, leaving in its place a confusion of feelings that she didn't want to examine too closely. "You did perfectly," Victor said, when the doors opened in the basement. "Thank you, Emily." He gently held her arm when she began to move away. "About what I said up there about Isabella and you, it was just to keep the conversation flowing." "It wasn't." She looked at him in the reflection of the polished metal elevator doors. "Then what was it?" "The truth. And that scares me as much as it should scare you." Emily moved away from the elevator toward the car, but his words echoed in her mind throughout the journey home. When she reached the apartment and took off the expensive dress, looking at herself again in the mirror, she realized that the woman staring back had changed during the night, and she wasn't sure if she could go back to being who she was before. Revenge had become something much more complicated than justice for her dead sister. It had become a question of deciding what kind of person she wanted to be and with whom she wanted to be that person. Both questions had the same frightening answer. The photographs appeared in the tabloids the next morning. Emily leafed through the pages of a gossip magazine in the company cafeteria, pretending casual interest while reading the speculation about Victor Hollister's new love. The images captured moments from the previous night, them dancing, laughing, her touching his arm during a conversation, his gaze on her while talking with other guests. To any outside observer, they looked like a genuinely in-love couple. Interesting reading, Marcus's voice behind her made her start. Just curiosity. Emily casually closed the magazine. It's strange to see the boss in the social pages. Victor has always been discreet about his personal life. Until now. Marcus sat at her table with a cup of coffee. You must be really special for him to expose himself so publicly. I don't know. We don't discuss personal life at work. Of course not, it would be inappropriate. But there was irony in his voice, although I imagine some conversations are inevitable considering the circumstances. Emily maintained a neutral expression, but internally felt all the alarms going off. What circumstances? A junior employee romantically involved with the company president. Creates interesting dynamics, don't you think? I never thought about it. You should think, Marcus leaned over the table, because others certainly will, and will comment, and some will even investigate. The threat was clear, disguised as fraternal advice. Emily forced an uncomfortable smile. I appreciate the concern, but I'm sure we'll know how to handle any situation that arises. I'm sure you will. Marcus stood up. Oh, and Emily, Victor asked for you to go up to his office at 3 in the afternoon. A private meeting. When Marcus walked away, Emily felt her stomach contract. The way he had said, private, carried insinuations she preferred not to analyze. She spent the rest of the morning trying to concentrate on work, but the curious eyes of colleagues followed her through the corridors. The gossip had spread quickly. At 3 o'clock sharp, she went up to the 42nd floor. Victor's secretary greeted her with a smile that mixed professionalism and poorly disguised curiosity. You can go in directly, he's waiting. Victor was standing by the window, speaking on the phone in English with someone who clearly wasn't cooperating. His voice was cold, cutting, with the tone of someone who was accustomed to being obeyed without question. When he saw Emily, he gestured for her to sit down and abruptly ended the call. Problems? She asked. Always, but nothing that can't be resolved. He walked to the desk and picked up a tablet. I saw the photos, they looked convincing. Very convincing, Marcus made a point of commenting. I imagine so. And what was his reaction? I played the role of an employee embarrassed by the unwanted attention. I think he bought it. Victor nodded, but there was tension in his movements. We have a bigger problem. Robert Falcon, whom you met yesterday, made some calls. He's questioning your hiring, your background, your convenience for the company. Emily felt her blood cool. Did he discover anything? Not yet, but he's looking. And Robert has resources to find whatever he wants. Victor sat behind the desk. We need to accelerate our agenda. How? By making our relationship more official and more intimate. The word intimate hung in the air between them like an unspoken confession. Emily stared at him, trying to decipher what exactly he was proposing. What does more intimate mean? It means you're going to move into my penthouse, temporarily, he added quickly. To any outside observer, we'll be a couple who decided to live together. For us, it will just be a matter of convenience and safety. Safety? Robert is not just a concerned shareholder. He's one of the men who authorized Isabella's death. If he discovers who you really are. Victor didn't finish the sentence. Emily felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. He was involved in my sister's murder. He coordinated it. Marcus executed it. I provided the location. The words came out like a confession ripped by force. The three of us are equally guilty. My God. Emily stood up abruptly, walking to the window. The city stretched below, indifferent to the revelations that were destroying her world. How many more are involved? In total, 8 people, 5 still alive. And you intend to hand over all of them? I intend to destroy them, completely. But for that, I need you to trust me enough to put yourself in even more danger. Emily turned to face him. There was something different about Victor at that moment. The mask of control had slipped, revealing a man desperate for redemption and terrified by the possibility of losing it. If I agree to move into your house, how will we maintain the professional boundaries? The penthouse has 3 bedrooms. You'll have total privacy, and we'll establish clear rules about personal space and physical limits. What kind of rules? Victor hesitated, as if navigating unknown territory. Nothing happens between us unless you want it, explicitly, and only if it's not related to our current situation. And if I want it? The question came out before she could contain herself. Victor looked at her with an intensity that made the air thicker. Then we'll cross a line from which we might not be able to return. The silence that followed was loaded with unspoken possibilities. Emily knew she was approaching an emotional precipice that could destroy not only her mission, but her ability to distinguish between justice and revenge, between necessity and desire. How long do we have to decide? You need to move tonight. Robert is planning a deeper investigation tomorrow. If we're living together, he'll assume that. Any irregularity in your history is the result of a serious relationship and not a false identity. Emily returned to the chair, feeling the weight of the decision. It was a step that would dangerously bring her closer to the man who had participated in her sister's murder. But it could also be her only chance to discover the whole truth and bring all the culprits to justice. What guarantees can you give me? None. Beyond my word that I'll protect you with my own life if necessary. The word of a murderer. The word of a man who's trying to redeem himself. Sometimes it's the only thing we have. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of Isabella, of the niece who was growing up without a mother, of the justice she had sworn to bring. When she opened them, her decision was made. Will I have complete access to the company files? Yes. And protection for my family? Already arranged. And when all this is over, if I discover you lied to me about anything, you have permission to kill me. Personally. Emily extended her hand. Then I accept your proposal, but with one additional condition. Which? If at any moment I feel that you're taking advantage of the situation or confusing convenience with feeling, I leave. Immediately. And I take with me everything I've discovered until then. Victor shook her hand, and for the first time since, they met. His smile seemed completely genuine. I accept, but Emily? Yes. What if you're the one who confuses convenience with feeling? The question echoed in the air as she left the office. That afternoon, packing her few possessions in the rented apartment, Emily wondered if she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, or if she was finally truly living for the first time in years. In Victor's penthouse 3 hours later, looking at Chicago through the glass walls that seemed to suspend the apartment in the sky, she had her answer. It was both things at the same time. And that scared and excited her, in equal measure. Victor's penthouse was a temple of glass and steel suspended over Chicago. Emily spent the first night awake, walking through the immense rooms trying to get used to the luxury that surrounded her. Everything there cost more than she would earn in several lifetimes. Original works of art, designer furniture, a kitchen. That looked like it came out of an architecture magazine. But it was the view that disturbed her most. From any window, the city stretched infinitely, as if she were observing a kingdom over which Victor reigned with iron fists. The room he had designated for her was at the opposite end of the apartment, separated by a living room, a library, and a private office. It was larger than her entire former apartment, with a closet, private bathroom, and a balcony that offered a view of Lincoln Park. An obvious attempt to maintain physical and emotional distance. Victor had left flowers on the nightstand. White, orchids, elegant and cold like everything else in that place. The attached card said only, to keep up appearances, V. But Emily had found another note hidden inside the vase, handwritten in careful calligraphy. Thank you for giving me a chance to be better than I am. The next morning, they established a carefully choreographed routine. Victor went out running at 5:30. She used the private gym in the apartment at 6. They had breakfast together at 7, superficially discussing the day's plans, while the housekeeper, Mrs. Carmen, discreetly circulated preparing meals. It was domestic and artificial at the same time. Robert requested a meeting this afternoon, Victor mentioned casually while cutting an apple into perfect slices. He wants to get to know better the woman who conquered my heart. And what will my story be? Business administration degree, middle-class family. We met at a cultural event, love at first sight. He paused. He'll try to provoke you. Robert likes to test people, see how far he can push before they break. And if I break? You won't break, but if he crosses any line, let me know immediately. Emily nodded, but internally felt butterflies in her stomach. Facing Robert Falcon meant looking into the eyes of one of the men who had ordered her sister's death. She wasn't sure if she could maintain her composure. At the company, speculation about their relationship had reached soap opera levels. Emily heard whispers through the corridors, felt curious and sometimes envious gazes. The women in the company observed her with a mixture of fascination and distrust, as if she were a venomous snake disguised as a domestic animal. The princess moved up quickly, commented one of the secretaries when Emily passed through reception. Must be very talented, replied another with cutting sarcasm. Emily pretended not to hear, but the words hurt more than they should, not for what they said about her, but for what they revealed about how women were viewed in that environment. They were either competent and asexual, or beautiful and incompetent. There was no middle ground. Marcus appeared at the end of the morning, carrying a folder of documents and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Emily, I need your help with a special project. Victor personally approved. She followed him to a meeting room on the 41st floor, where he spread photographs on the table. They were surveillance images of a middle-aged man entering and leaving a commercial building. Congressman Richard Adams, Marcus explained, chairman of the committee investigating irregularities in public bids. I need a complete dossier on him, family, finances, personal habits, vulnerabilities. Emily studied the photographs, recognizing the pattern. It was exactly the kind of investigation that had preceded other convenient disappearances. For what purposes? The congressman is being inconvenient, asking questions about some of Hollister Holdings' partner companies. We need material to discourage him. Blackmail. Strategic persuasion, Marcus corrected coldly. It's an important difference in the business world. Emily pretended to study the documents while her mind worked quickly. If she could gain access to the complete files of that project, she might discover how the company eliminated political obstacles, maybe even find evidence about other cases, including Isabella's. How much time do I have? 1 week. And Emily? Marcus leaned over the table. This project requires absolute discretion. Not even Victor should know the specific details. The lie was obvious. Victor certainly knew everything. But Marcus was testing her loyalty, trying to discover if she would report directly to her lover or if she could be co-opted independently. Understood. That afternoon, Robert Falcon arrived at the office like an emperor visiting distant territories. Tall, tanned, with grey hair combed back, and a suit that cost more than a popular car, he emanated the kind of power that came from generations of privilege and influence. Victor received him personally, and Emily was summoned for a casual encounter in the office. She entered wearing a navy blue dress that Fernanda had specifically selected to convey discreet elegance and subtle professionalism. Robert, this is Emily. Victor made the introductions with rehearsed naturalness. Emily, Robert Falcon, one of our main shareholders. Robert took her hand between his, holding it for a few seconds longer than socially appropriate. His eyes studied her with uncomfortable intensity. Pleasure, my dear. Victor has told me much about you. I hope good things. Only the best, although he has been surprisingly discreet about how you met. Robert smiled, but there was coldness in the smile. Tell me yourself. Emily gave a quick glance at Victor, who nodded almost imperceptibly. We met at an art exhibition at the Art Institute. I was admiring a Picasso, and Victor made a comment about the brushstroke technique. We started talking, and the rest is history. How romantic. And where do you work, dear? Right here, actually, in the administrative department. Ah. Robert's exclamation carried volumes of meaning. What an interesting coincidence. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Robert asking seemingly casual questions about Emily's family, her education, her career plans. Each question was a careful probe, looking for inconsistencies or weak points. Emily responded with the right measure of calculated nervousness and genuine confidence. "Well, I must say you make a charming couple," Robert finally concluded. "Although I should warn you, Emily, that Victor has a complicated history with relationships." "Robert," Victor intervened with a warning tone. No, it's fair that she knows." Robert kept his eyes on Emily. "Our friend here tends to be intense in his passions, and sometimes that can be dangerous for the women in his life." The comment carried a sinister weight that made Emily's stomach contract. It was a threat disguised as paternal advice. "I appreciate the concern," she responded calmly, "but I'm capable of taking care of myself." "I'm sure you are, dear. I'm sure you are." After Robert left, Victor closed the office door and turned to Emily with a somber expression. "How did you feel?" "Like I'd just been examined by a predator deciding if I would be a satisfying snack." "Accurate description. And what was your impression of him?" Emily considered the question carefully. "He's intelligent, cruel, and completely devoid of conscience. And he knows exactly who I am." "He doesn't know, but strongly suspects, which is almost as dangerous." Victor walked to the window. "He'll investigate more deeply now. We have maybe a week before he discovers the truth. Then we have a week to collect enough evidence to destroy him first." "You're talking about declaring war on one of the most powerful men in the country." Emily approached him, stopping close enough to feel the heat from his body, but maintaining a respectful distance. "I'm not declaring war, Victor. War was declared 3 years ago when they killed my sister. I'm just finally retaliating." He turned to face her, and there was something in his eyes that she couldn't completely identify. Admiration, perhaps, or fear. "And if in the process you become exactly the kind of person you're trying to destroy, then at least Isabella will have been avenged. And if I can't protect you from what's coming?" The question carried a vulnerability that caught him off guard. Emily saw at that moment not the ruthless executive or the dangerous conspirator, but a man haunted by ghosts he couldn't exorcise. "Then you will have tried, and sometimes the attempt is all we have." They stood, like that for long moments, two conspirators united by secrets and separated by guilt. Outside, Chicago pulsed with life indifferent to the deadly games unfolding in that glass tower. That night in the penthouse, Emily found Victor in the kitchen at 2 in the morning, drinking whiskey and looking at the city through the glass. "All nightmares?" she asked. "Always. And you?" "Also always." They drank in companionable silence, two insomniacs united by different but equally deep traumas. It was intimate without being romantic, connected without being sexual. But when Victor murmured, "I'm sorry about your sister," and Emily replied, "I know," something changed between them. A line had been crossed, and neither was sure if they could go back. The discovery happened by chance. Emily was working on Congressman Adams's dossier when her search in the company archives led her to an encrypted folder marked only as Project Cleanup. Using the access codes Victor had given her, she managed to open the first documents and felt the blood freeze in her veins. 17 names, 17 people who had been removed in the last 5 years for representing threats to Hollister Holdings. Investigative journalists, federal auditors, overly ambitious prosecutors, and employees who discovered corporate secrets. Each name, accompanied by photographs, surveillance reports, detailed personal histories, and finally, elimination reports. Isabella Morrison was on the list. Number 14. Emily read the final report about her sister with trembling hands, cold clinical details, describing how she had been lured to a fake meeting in the company basement, where Marcus and 2 security guards were waiting for her. The death had been quick, an injection that simulated an overdose. The body was discarded in a vacant lot on the outskirts, where it would be found days later by homeless people. But it was the last paragraph that destroyed any remaining illusion about Victor. The report was personally signed by him with a handwritten note, Procedure executed as planned. Risk neutralized. Files recovered and destroyed. VH. Emily felt nausea rise in her throat. Victor hadn't just given up Isabella's location. He had personally planned her execution. Everything he had told her about trying to protect her sister, about loving Isabella, about regret, were calculated lies to manipulate her. Found something interesting? Marcus's voice behind her made her violently start. She quickly closed the folder, but not before he saw what she was reading. "Wrong file," she murmured, trying to appear unconcerned. "I was looking for information about the congressman and ended up in the project cleanup archives." Marcus approached slowly, like a predator circling wounded prey. What an unfortunate coincidence. Emily rose from the chair, instinctively putting the desk between them. "Marcus, I can explain." "I'm sure you can, Emily. Or should I say, Isabella Morrison?" The world seemed to freeze around her. Marcus smiled, but it was a smile as cold as a butcher's blade. "Did you really think we wouldn't find out? A serious background check took exactly 3 days to connect Emily Morrison to Isabella Morrison. Sisters, what a small coincidence." Emily quickly calculated her options. The door was blocked by Marcus, the windows were sealed, and he was certainly armed. Her only chance was to buy time until she could alert Victor. Does Victor know? "Victor was the one who asked me to investigate." Marcus laughed. "Did you really think he had fallen madly in love with an ordinary employee? Please, Emily, give his intelligence more credit. Then why maintain the charade?" "Because you're useful, dear. A motivated avenger, willing to do anything to discover the truth about her little dead sister. Victor thought he could use your thirst for justice to eliminate some internal problems." "What problems?" "Robert Falcon, mainly. He's getting greedy, wanting to take total control of the company. Victor needs to eliminate him, but he can't do it alone without raising suspicions, so he decided to use you as a weapon. And afterward, you would have a very convenient accident. Overdose, perhaps, or a fall from the penthouse during a moment of depression. Inconsolable widows sometimes do desperate things, don't they?" The revelation hit her like a punch to the stomach. Everything had been planned from the beginning. The hiring, the approach, the fake romance, the move to the penthouse. She had been manipulated with surgical precision. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because plans have changed." Marcus came closer. "Robert made me a better offer, and frankly, I'm tired of being someone's right-hand man. My time has come to take control." "Does Victor know about the betrayal?" "He'll know soon. When he finds your body, along with a detailed confession about how you discovered the company's crimes and couldn't handle the guilt of having become romantically involved with a murderer." Emily backed up to the wall, desperately looking for a way out. "Robert is behind this. Robert is a visionary. He understands that dirty business requires dirty methods. Victor got too sentimental, especially after he convinced himself he was in love with you." "He's not in love with me. You yourself said it was manipulation." "It was. In the beginning." Marcus laughed again. "But you haven't seen how he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching, or how poorly he's been sleeping since you moved into the penthouse. Victor Hollister, the man who killed dozens of people without blinking, is genuinely tormented for the first time in his life." The tease. Revelation should have consoled her, but it only increased her despair. If Victor really had feelings for her, he was about to suffer as much as she was. "What do you want from me?" "For you to sign a confession I've already prepared. It details how you discovered the company's crimes, how Victor tried to buy you with a fake romance, and how you decided to kill yourself because you couldn't live with the guilt." Marcus took a pistol from his blazer. "You can sign voluntarily, or I can force you. Your choice." Emily looked at the confession he placed on the desk. It was detailed, convincing, and would perfectly explain both her death and Victor's fall. "Robert would come out clean from any suspicion. And if I refuse, then your death will be mortal and uncomfortable. But the final result will be the same." Emily picked up the pen with trembling hands. While pretending to read the confession, her mind worked desperately looking for a way out. Marcus was too close for her to disarm him, but maybe... Can I make one last call? To my family. Do you think I'm an idiot? To Victor, then. If he planned all this, at least I deserve to confront him before I die. Marcus considered for a moment. One call, with speakerphone, and if you try any code or warning, I'll shoot you immediately. Emily dialed Victor's number with trembling fingers. He answered on the second ring. Emily, is everything okay? You sound... Victor, I need to talk to you. I discovered some things about the company, about Isabella. There was silence on the other end of the line, then his voice became different, colder. What kind of things? The project cleanup, the 17 names. Your signature on the final report about my sister. Another silence, longer. When Victor spoke again, there was genuine pain in his voice. Emily. Was it all a lie? The regret, the remorse, the desire for redemption? No, what I feel for you is real. The rest is complicated. Marcus signaled for her to end the call, but Emily continued speaking quickly. Marcus is here with me. He says Robert made a better offer. He says you plan to use me against Robert from the beginning. Son of a bitch, Victor murmured. Emily, listen carefully. Don't sign anything Marcus puts in front of you, no matter what he threatens to do. Too late for that, Marcus shouted in the direction of the phone. She already knows everything. Victor. About you, about me, about what really happened to her sister. The only question now is whether she dies quickly or slowly. Marcus, if you touch one finger on her, you'll do what? Kill me too. How many more people do you plan to add to your list before admitting you're a monster? Emily heard Victor breathe deeply on the other end of the line. When he spoke, his voice was strangely calm. Marcus, you made a fatal mistake. Which? You assumed I didn't know about your betrayal. The sound of doors being broken down echoed through the corridor. Marcus turned, confused, and Emily took advantage of the distraction to throw herself behind the desk. Shots echoed, shouts, the sound of physical struggle. When silence returned, Victor was standing at the door with a pistol in his hand and a murderous expression on his face. Marcus lay on the floor, a pool of blood slowly spreading beneath his body. Is he dead? Emily asked, coming out from behind the desk. Yes. Victor didn't lower the gun. And now we have a much bigger problem. What problem? You know too. Much, Emily. And unlike Marcus, I can't simply eliminate you. His face was a mask of pain and determination. Emily realized she had reached the final moment of truth. Why can't you? Because I really fell in love with you, and that makes me more dangerous than Marcus ever was. Marcus's body was removed by a cleanup team that arrived in less than 20 minutes, silent professionals who worked as if they were dealing with a water leak instead of a murder. Emily observed everything from a chair in the corner of the room, still in a state of shock, while Victor coordinated the operation with military coldness. You have 6 hours for this to never have happened, he said to the team leader. Marcus, Taylor died in a car accident on the Chicago River. The body will be found tomorrow morning. Understood, sir. When they were alone, the silence in the room seemed physical. Victor sat behind the desk where Marcus had threatened Emily just an hour before, the pistol still in his hands. She observed him, trying to reconcile the man who had just saved her life with the monster who had planned her sister's death. So it was all true, she finally said. Every word Marcus spoke. Most of it, yes. Victor placed the gun on the desk. I planned Isabella's death. I signed the execution order. And yes, initially I planned to use you against Robert. And what changed? You changed. He stood up, walking to the window. Outside, Chicago continued indifferent to the destroyed. Lives in that glass tower. I expected a woman broken by pain, desperate for revenge, easy to manipulate. I found someone stronger than me, more integral than I ever was, and that scared me. Emily stood up from the chair, feeling her legs trembling. Scared you enough to cancel the plan. Scared me enough to want to cancel everything. The company, the crimes, the life I built on bodies. He turned to face her. For the first time in 20 years, I looked in the mirror and saw a monster, and I wanted to stop being one. But you didn't stop. I didn't know how to stop. Life has its own inertia, Emily. Each crime leads to the next. Each buried secret requires another body to keep it in place. His voice carried deep weariness. Until you appeared and made me believe that maybe there was a way out. Emily walked to the desk, picked up the pistol he had left there. Victor didn't move to stop her. And what was the way out? Letting. You destroy me? Completely. Handing me over to Robert, exposing all the crimes, accepting whatever consequence came. He paused. And afterward, if I was still alive, trying to find a way to live with what I had done. Counting on me to forgive. You? Counting on you to decide if I deserved forgiveness. Emily pointed the gun at him, exactly as she had done on the first day in his office. But this time her fingers weren't trembling. You killed my sister, Victor. Yes. Planned to use my love for her to manipulate me. Yes. Lied about everything from the first moment. Not about everything. He took a step in her direction. Not about what I feel for you. Emily felt tears burning her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. How can I believe anything you say? You can't. And you shouldn't, Victor continued, approaching slowly. But I can prove it. How? Robert is still alive. He's still planning to take control of the company. He still represents everything rotten in this system. He stopped a meter away. Help me destroy him. Completely. And then shoot me if you want. And if I shoot right now, then at least I'll die knowing that the last thing I did was save the life of the woman I love. The words hung suspended in the air between them. Emily kept the gun pointed, but she felt her determination wavering, not because of Victor's declaration of love, but because of the genuine pain she saw in his eyes. Talk about the plan against Robert. He'll move quickly now that Marcus is dead. Probably try to take control of the company within 48 hours, claiming instability in leadership. Victor leaned against the desk. I have documents that prove his crimes over the last 10 years. Murders, political corruption, money laundering, enough to bury him 3 times. Why didn't you use them before? Because he has the same types of documents about me. It was a balance of terror, he smiled bitterly, until you arrived and changed the whole equation. How? Because you're the only person in the world who has a legitimate reason to destroy both of us. If you expose Robert using my own evidence, no one will suspect it was my collaboration. Emily lowered the gun slightly. And afterward? Afterward, I disappear. Officially, Victor Hollister dies in an accident or suicide, or simply vanishes from the map. You're left with enough evidence to destroy the entire network, avenge your sister, and get rid of me at the same time. And unofficially? Unofficially, I live with a new identity somewhere far away, carrying the guilt of what I did and the memory of what could have been different. It was a plan that made logical sense, but Emily knew there was something more. You're hiding something. Victor hesitated. Robert won't simply accept his defeat. When he realizes he's being exposed, he'll try to eliminate any threat. You mean he'll try to kill me? Yes, and for that I'll need to be alive to protect you. Emily finally lowered the gun completely. So it's not altruism. It's practical necessity. It's both. Victor came closer. Emily, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know you should hate everything about me, but you need to know that when I said I love you, it was the first complete truth I've spoken in years. And that should make a difference? It shouldn't, but does it? Emily studied him for long moments. She saw the man who had killed her sister, but also the man who had risked everything to save her from Marcus. She saw the monster who had built an empire of crimes, but also the destroyed human being who wanted redemption more than anything. If I agree to this plan, I want some guarantees. All I can give. First, complete access to all files about Robert, everything. Done. Second, when it's all over, you disappear forever, no matter what happens between us. Victor flinched as if he had been slapped. If that's what you want. It's what needs to happen. Emily extended her hand. And third, nothing physical between us while we're working together. Nothing that might confuse business with feeling. Understood. Victor shook her hand, but when he tried to pull away, Emily didn't let go. One last thing, Victor. What? When all this is over, when Robert is destroyed and you've disappeared, I'll visit Isabella's grave. And I'll tell her that the man who killed her loved me enough to destroy himself for redemption. Emily squeezed his hand firmly. I don't know if that means forgiveness, but it means that her death wasn't completely in vain. Victor closed his eyes, and for the first time, since they met, Emily saw tears running down his face. Thank you, he murmured. Don't thank me yet. Robert is still alive, and that means you still have work to do. Victor opened his eyes, wiped away the tears, and resumed the mask of control he knew so well. Then let's finish this. That night, in the penthouse, they worked side by side, organizing the evidence against Robert Falcon, documents, recordings, photographs, bank transfers, a complete file of a decade of crimes that would be enough to destroy not only Robert, but the entire corruption network he commanded. It was almost dawn when Emily finally allowed herself to look at Victor, working in concentration, calculating each move of his own destruction. There was something tragically beautiful about it. A man so accustomed to destroying others that he had perfected the art of destroying himself as well. Are you really going to disappear when this is over? She asked. Yes. Where to? To somewhere I can never hurt anyone again. Emily nodded, pretending the answer didn't hurt more than it should. Good. But when she got up to go to her room, Victor gently held her wrist. Emily. Yes? Thank you for giving me the chance to do one right thing in my life. She looked at his hand on her wrist, then at his face. You're welcome, Victor, and thank you for giving me the chance to avenge my sister. You're welcome. They looked at each other for a moment that extended through a lifetime of lost possibilities. Then Emily moved away and went to her room, leaving Victor alone with his demons and his documents. Outside, Chicago was awakening to another day, indifferent to the fact that in a few hours, one of the most powerful men in the country would be destroyed by love and redemption. Robert Falcon's fall began at 6 in the morning on a rainy Tuesday, when Emily personally delivered a sealed envelope to federal prosecutor Richard Sanders. Inside, meticulously organized evidence of a decade of crimes, ordered murders, bought politicians, blackmailed businessmen, silenced auditors, enough to ensure that Robert would spend the rest of his life in prison if he survived long enough for the trial. Where did this come from? Asked the prosecutor, quickly leafing through the documents. From someone who decided to do the right thing before it was too late, Emily answered. And this person is dead. Suicide from guilt. Left this evidence as a last attempt at redemption. It was partially true. Victor Hollister had officially died the night before in a helicopter accident over Lake Forest. The body was never found, consumed by fire and the fall. The newspapers reported it as a business tragedy, the eccentric billionaire who died trying to escape from approaching investigations. In reality, Victor was 500 kilometers away, driving an old pickup truck toward the interior of Missouri, carrying only a suitcase of simple clothes and fake identity documents. Emily had insisted on not knowing where he was going. Some goodbyes needed to be definitive. It will work, he had said the night before, while transferring the last files to encrypted flash drives. Robert will be arrested. The company will be investigated. All the guilty will fall together. And you? I'm going to try to discover who I am when I'm not a monster. They were in the penthouse for the last time, surrounded by boxes of documents that would be delivered to the authorities. It was domestic and final at the same time. Emily, Victor stopped organizing papers and turned to her. Can I ask one thing? You can try. When all this is over, when you've rebuilt your life, sometimes remember me not just as the man who killed Isabella. Remember also as the man who learned to love because of you. Emily felt tears threatening, but she contained them. Victor, you don't need to say anything. Just Remember, now 6 months later, Emily was standing in front of Isabella's grave in Evanston Cemetery, holding a bouquet of white orchids. The simple headstone bore only Isabella Morrison, 1994-2021. Loving mother, dedicated sister. "We did it, Isa," she murmured, placing the flowers on the marble. "Robert is in prison awaiting trial for 17 murders. The company was dismantled, all executives indicted. Even the politicians they bought are being investigated." August wind rustled the trees around the cemetery, creating shadows that danced on the ground. Emily knelt beside the grave. "And Victor?" She hesitated. "Victor disappeared. Officially, he's dead. I don't know if I'll ever see him again, and maybe it's better that way. But he changed, Isa. In the end, he really changed." She stayed there for another hour, telling her sister about the last few months, how she had testified before parliamentary committees, how she helped identify other victims of Project Cleanup, how she used the money Victor had left in secret, accounts to create an assistance fund for the victims' families. When she left the cemetery, she found Sophie, her 8-year-old niece, waiting in the car with her grandmother. The girl had grown, but still had Isabella's large, curious eyes. "Aunt Emily, did you talk to Mommy?" "I did, sweetheart. She said she's proud of how you're growing strong and smart." "And will she come back someday?" Emily knelt at the girl's height. "No, Sophie. Your mother can't come back, but she lives in everything good you do, in every smile of yours, in every drawing you make thinking of her. And will you stay with us now?" "For as long as you want me." Emily had sold everything in Chicago and moved to Evanston, remote work as a business consultant, simple life in a house with a yard where Sophie could play. It was a quiet existence, very different from the intensity of recent years. But sometimes, on sleepless nights, she found herself thinking about Victor. Where was he? How was he living? Had he found the redemption he was looking for, or was he still haunted by the ghosts of the past? The answer came unexpectedly 2 years later, through a letter sent without a return address. Inside the envelope, just a few handwritten lines. "Emily, I know we promised there would be no contact, but I need you to know. I found peace. I work with orphaned children in rural Georgia, teaching mathematics and helping with the school garden. It's not complete redemption for what I did, but it's a start. Thank you for showing me it was possible to be better. Thank you for loving me enough to let me go. V." Emily read the letter 3 times, then burned it in the backyard of her house, watching the ashes rise with the afternoon breeze. Sophie was playing nearby, building sandcastles in a box they had set up under a tree. "Aunt, Emily, are you crying?" "No, sweetheart, it's just dust in my eye." "Want help with the castle?" Emily smiled, keeping the memories where they belonged, in the past. "Sure, let's make the biggest castle in the world." As they played together in the dirt, Emily allowed herself to think one last time about Victor. She hoped he had found the children who needed care as much as he needed to care. She hoped the Georgia sun had warmed the cold places in his soul. She hoped he slept well at night. And she hoped, secretly, that sometimes he also thought of her with affection, remembering not the woman who had destroyed his life, but the woman who had shown him that destruction could be just another type of beginning. Months later, Emily was finishing preparing dinner when Sophie came running from school with a drawing in her hands. "Aunt Emily, look! The teacher asked us to draw our family." Emily looked at the paper and smiled. There they were, she, Sophie, and the grandmother, holding hands in front of the house. In the sky, a female figure with wings and a halo. "That's Mommy," Sophie explained. "She takes care of us from up there." "Beautiful, sweetheart. Let's put it on the refrigerator." While attaching the drawing with a magnet, Emily noticed there was something else on the paper. In the corner, almost imperceptible, Sophie had drawn a small male figure, far from the main family. When she asked about it, the girl shrugged. "It's just someone who's also learning to be good." Emily looked at the drawing for long moments. Sometimes children see things that adults prefer to pretend don't exist. She smiled, kissed Sophie's forehead, and continued with dinner. Outside, life continued its eternal dance. People fell in love, made mistakes, sought forgiveness, tried to be better than they were. It was an infinite waltz of redemption and new beginnings. And somewhere very far from there, a man who had once been a monster was teaching a 6-year-old girl to add fractions while the sun set over a small town where no one knew his real name. It was enough. For both, it was enough. Emily picked up Sophie in her arms and danced with her around the kitchen, while outside Chicago pulsed with millions of lives that intertwined and separated, each carrying its own stories of love, loss, and the eternal.